Namaste and in Lak'ech, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and I appreciate your view. Please do subscribe, like, share, make some comments. Those are the most important things, and I will absolutely respond to them. So please do make a comment. And also visit planetarycitizens.net, where you can download your free copy of Planetary Citizens Awakening the Heart of Humanity. It will give you an idea just how close we really are in expressing this concept of oneness that you hear everybody talking about. And I guarantee you it will stir your soul. So thanks for that. Now also, this week's guest is Marina Demchenko. She has a doctorate in philosophy and international economics. Now, she's also a TEDx speaker, a scientist and researcher, analyst and consultant. She works with a dear friend of mine, Dr. Alexander Laszlo, at the Laszlo Institute of New Paradigm Research. And by the way, Alexander is also on the board of our Planetary Citizens Advisory Group, too. So do visit the website. Now, with her PhD in economics, she's also got this deep interest in consciousness and how we can express it, what it means, and how we can find out more about how it works and to acquiesce to that within our own being. So this is going to be an awesome conversation. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Zendor, and yes, you have been expecting me. I'll be your guide, playing the devil's advocate as we peer into the depths of what keeps us afraid, angry, ignorant, and immobile. You draw your own conclusions. So many times, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And in today's world with so much misinformation keeping us apart, it really does matter how we interact with one another.
Marina, it's such a great opportunity to have you here. We've had some scheduling kerfuffles recently, and by gosh, I'm so glad that you made it. And thank you so much for showing up. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm very glad to be here.
That's awesome. Now we had a little prelim about why I'm doing this and the need for discovering these inner realities that we all experience, but we don't talk about a whole lot because we think others are going to reject us for some reason. We might even reject ourselves because it seems so incredulous in the experiences that we have. Well, we're going to bring those out today. So thank you for showing up and being willing to do that. That being said, and we'll also explore how that becomes practical in your research and your work today. So when did this idea, this notion of interconnectedness and a greater world beyond the physical present itself to you? How did that happen in your early life?
Yeah, thank you. Perhaps it would be better to bridge my PhD dissertation to from
Oh,
where
we'll
I
get to
started.
that, trust me.
Yeah, because it's connected, because
Okay. Well, of course, everything's connected, right?
my dissertation was dedicated to the local development.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking on what should be done on the regional level in order to make the territory prosperous. Maybe not even prosperous, but flourishing, because I also wanted to take into the consideration the intangible cultural things, what makes people proud of being the residents of the territory.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we value the places where we live? And this notion brought me to the understanding that we usually hugely underestimate our local identity as a connection to the place and to the land, and ultimately,
do we even have an identity?
Yeah, so we again, I was born and raised in the very multinational place. So I'm originally Russian, and
I kind of thought that. I forgot to mention that
yeah,
my
yeah.
wife is from St. Petersburg. She graduated from Muskorsky College.
Yeah, yeah. In comparison of the territory, perhaps it's just like, for example, being somewhere in Europe because the destinations are so huge. I was
And
born
Russia is huge.
in the southern part of Russia, a very
Right.
multinational region. We had more than 100 nationalities. I know it for sure because alongside with my economic work, during some period of time, I was working on the multicultural and multinational relationships in
What
the
what a
territory.
rich environment.
Yeah, so that's why I understood very early that yes, we could have national identity, but it also should be balanced with their with the with the citizens, not citizens, so how to place-based territorial identity.
Right.
So that's why we came to this idea of being a citizen of a place, not a citizen of a state, but a citizen in terms of ancient Greek uh, resident of a polis, of a
Sure,
city,
sure.
citizen.
Well, that's what Planetary Citizens is about. Donald Keyes in the 70s, as the speechwriter for You Thought, he founded Planetary Citizens originally with the notion that we need a borderless world, right? We need to consider that we're all planetary citizens. That yes, we have a locale, we have a region, but we're all part of the world. We share the air, the water, the land, and we haven't always respected that.
Yeah. And I think that being connected to the place, again, not their municipality, not the territory, not the administrative
Hmm.
entity, but to the land as environment. Maybe, so now we are mostly talking about bi-regional belonging. So to the place which embodies their nature, embodies their whole living ecosystem to which
Hmm.
we belong. And through this, it's the shortest way to understand your connection to Earth, to connection to planet, and to this being a
Sure.
planetary citizen, a person
Yeah.
who.
How many bioregions have you identified? I know in the regenerative culture, there's a number of them that have similar but different needs because of the terrain and the climate.
Well, to be to have academically clear, we are not pursuing the idea of sort of counting the number. It's
Right.
mostly important for us because our work is mostly focused on the cultural, historical, spiritual aspects, not
Hmm.
in particular natural, so ecological. But at the same time, I think it's really important to take it holistically as a whole. Again, returning to your initial question about inner sense of belonging and interconnectedness, I need to mention my um, exploring and sort of being very interested in the integral theory of
Hmm.
Ken Wilber, and through his works with many different theories of vertical development, maybe starting with spiral dynamics. By the way, I saw that you had the presentation of this theory on your
Sure.
channel as well. So
And it's
I
wonderful that Barbara Marx Hubbard, who worked with, I believe, Graves and Beck for a little bit, developed the co-creation wheel from spiral dynamics, which
Mhm.
is another model that we use. And I was so gifted. I actually met Barbara and had lunch with her, well, probably about a decade ago. And it was a special moment. I was in process of promoting her work as well. So the opportunity came out of nowhere. And it was just an amazing experience. Now, in that interconnectedness, what did you notice as you were beginning on this path, the people that you connected with? How uh, was there an internal and external um, validation of those connections? Was there a certain resonance that you felt more with some than others in the process?
That's precisely what I wanted to refer to, is the this balance of internal, external, individual, and collective aspects of both individual development, social development. And so I was thinking about this just because you mentioned this approach to bioregions and to the ecological ecosystemic development. And I think that the most problem today is separation of sort of or even siloing of different academic fields. So we have ecologists who are working precisely on the natural aspects, tangible, sort of geographical aspects. We have people from the cultural studies who are working with some aspects of culture, of history, of spirituality. Again, we have psychologists who are working with the people and with their inner experience and their inner development. Again, very often inspiration from all these things. So I think that it's really important, and that's our premise in our work, is looking at all these different aspects of our development, all four quadrants. Yeah,
and perhaps maybe the accidental silos that occurred because of it, because I don't think there's intentional, building silos. It's just the focus of the work is so narrow and yet complex that it almost causes that tunnel vision for a while. And then how do you look up, right? Once you get to the place where you're ready to begin to look around and see how it applies with other sectors, like in the co-creation wheel, how does that occur? What are the kind of things that you've noticed that works well in order to do that?
Well, I like this approach of to understand it better, again, as I at least explain it to myself. So from the Western perspective,
got to start there, right?
Yeah. So from the Western perspective, we are mostly taught to divide on different so the complex things into small pieces, and then very attentively explore each piece in separation. And again, in comparison to, for example, Eastern approach, when you look at the phenomenon holistically, and you understand how it works and how all different aspects of aliveness of the system interrelate and are interconnected with each other.
Right.
So,
well, and it's a much older system than the Western ideologies.
well, I think that there are some advantages in both parts, sort of in both approaches.
Don't deny the advantages, because they still have to meet in the middle, right? But the basis, the ancient understanding, even from the Vedas, right? That's the Eastern world. Now, in the Western world, what do you find that correlates with that in the science and math area? Because Western world's more materialistic than the Eastern world in that sense, or so it seems. How do you bridge that?
So where to start?
Yeah.
I think
I know that's a deep question, and it's probably got a lot of answers. Where would you like to start?
Yeah. So again, maybe it should be easier to come to the approach which we are trying to apply now.
Okay.
Is that each phenomena which we meet and interact with opens its features and its qualities only in the relationships, in the process of interaction. So in this case, again, so returning and referring to Wilber's Aqual model, each phenomena or each Holland, sort of quoting Arthur Koestler and holistic approach, is a part and a whole. So in this case, when we approach to the territory, we understand that it's a part of the bigger planetarian ecosystem, but at the same time, it contains lots of parts, be it people, be it non-human beings, be it architecture, infrastructure, nature, roads, trees, grass, whatever.
Sure. It's kind of like a cell, right? It has all the information. It's got the DNA that has everything in it. But
Yeah.
yet there's a specialization that occurs within the cell that places it appropriately in the environment.
Yeah. So ultimately, we all are the particles of the stardust. Yes.
Right.
So in this case, this holistic approach, this understanding of the whole and the part and the part and interrelation and connectedness, it helps a lot, because from one perspective, you can understand that you can see something tangible, but at the same time, you understand that there is much, much more and deeper and much, much complex system behind it, which is not available, at least from the first glance. And
Sure.
and
Well, it's
again,
like a
through this
computer program,
relationship,
right? You have
yeah,
the interface, you've got the graphic user interface, but you don't know the amount of coding that has to go behind that in order for it to render.
yeah. So in this case, I think that acknowledging this complexity, honoring it, respecting this complexity, is maybe the first premise which should be followed in the relationships, be it a human being or a complex social system or a whole planetary life. And at the same time, again, we discussed these Eastern-Western differences
Sure.
and approaches. I think that now we live in a very interesting and challenging time when you have an ability and you, if you are interested, if you are curious enough, you can learn a lot from the indigenous cultures. And again,
Absolutely.
for the very long time, Western perspective was dominating, and we thought that the indigenous cultures are sort of underdeveloped. And
And do you
now we,
find that, pardon me for the interruption, do you find that to be the differences between the matriarchal and
yes, yes.
patriarchal systems?
Well, I maybe would like to frame it even wider from the feminine and masculine perspective,
Okay.
because again, not long ago, we had the discussion with some of my colleagues, and interestingly, this idea was also quoted at one of the meetings with Otto Scharmer, in which I took part maybe a week ago. So the idea is, so we in both these conversations, Karl Jaspers's idea of the axial age was referred to. So the idea is that the sort of the modern human civilization, it was formed, so most of the religions, they were formed from the 8 to 2 before Christ centuries. And in this case, through all this period of time, mostly human beings were developing in the idea of the monotheistic world, in the idea of anthropocentric world, in the and again, speaking about Western aspects, it's mostly materialism, which then developed into capitalism. And the idea is that perhaps in this transformative time, which we experience now, we are at the threshold of the second axial age where we should reimagine and re-identify who we are as a human beings.
Sure.
Because again, for the first period of time, we have AI, which sort of poses before us a question.
It's given us an ego leap in our ability to do research. Right? Now, we still have to question it because that does admit, well, we do make mistakes, but AI itself is not artificial. It's an aggregate of all the human data that's been put together. So it's going to have some errors. Now, how do you find those errors being corrected in the research that you're doing and the recognition, as we talked before with the Vedas, right? These even go way back before, the time of Christ, and the basics of the Vedantic philosophy is that we're all divine threads incarnate, connected to source, capable of God consciousness. Well, that kind of throws everything in the face of the Western world now, doesn't it?
Well, again, speaking about monotheism, it was mostly anthropocentric because in most religions, God is sort of a human-like divine.
And still separate from.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's still separate from human beings. So it's
right.
something, somebody outside, somebody higher and somewhere. So in this case,
far away, right?
Yeah, and in this case, we definitely and this so for example, first of all, AI, then interconnectedness. So we all are sort of in the same informational sphere now.
Yeah, I like to call it the thoughtmosphere.
Yeah, I like this idea of again, it was created separately, I believe, the notion of noosphere. It was created by Desjardins, and at the same time it was created, not the same time, but close, by Vladimir Vernadsky, who also created this notion of the
and Arguelles used it when he brought out the explanation of the Mayan calendar and the shift between ages as well.
Yeah. And I believe in this because, again, one of my colleagues are deeply connected with the neuroscientists who are working now with the Buddhist monks and again, so under the permission of Dalai Lama, they research these liminal near-death conditions, so experiences of monks. And the idea is to prove that there is the consciousness outside of the body.
Right. Well, Jeffrey Mishlev even got a $500,000 award for proving life after death. Robert Bigelow offered that, and so in understanding that, it also seems that in that interconnectedness, like Byron Spalding in the 20s, right? He took a team of research scientists to Southeast Asia because they'd heard about the monks living for 600 to 800 years, and they wanted to go find out if it was really true. Turns out it was. So now we're at the next level of digging into that from what you're saying, where we're looking at the experience side of things and having the understanding, the openness, and the right questions to ask to further dive in to bridge that experience and not, perhaps in the process, reducing our fears.
Yes. So first of all, I would like to note that it depends on what we understand in the life. Yeah, because again, speaking about microorganisms and cells and particles, our life is eternal.
Sure. We're superpositioned, right?
Yeah, but speaking about this idea of the external consciousness and the idea that we are mostly the conductors of the information and of the energy.
Well, that's the cosmic consciousness condensed into form.
Not the creators of it per se. That's the very interesting idea. And again,
but are we perhaps?
Well, for me personally, for me personally, I think the proof of simultaneous inventions which, so again, one of my another colleagues, by the way, also the fellow researcher in the Laszlo Institute of New Paradigm Research. So she is researching and collecting the proofs. Then scientists separately from each other,
Right.
almost at the same time, invented something similar.
Sure. Well,
So
there's for
I think that
decades.
that's a good proof of this external knowledge.
Right. And it's kind of social proof, right? Where notions, the ideas that need to come forth for a civilization to evolve come through multiple individuals simultaneously, where one or maybe all of them actually pick up on it and bring something into the world as a result. Now, we're at that place now with the internet, with AI, we're much closer for that potential interconnectedness to happen. But we're still dealing with the silos because we don't always know about each other. How do you see that evolving to where we have this horizontal activity taking place of people actually connecting with similar work? I mean, that's the notion of planetary citizens, is looking at these people that are doing the same things, unaware of each other, connecting them, not necessarily to manage them, but just to connect them so that they're aware of each other and can begin working together, which magnifies the whole process.
That's a real challenge for us, I think, as a civilization, because
Mhm.
this idea of, again, this idea of the shift of our identity, of our notion of who we are,
Right.
we definitely at the threshold of the understanding that competitive practices are not working anymore. And again, if we acknowledge that it's not the egoistic achievement of some specific person, it's a gift which is to some extent revealed,
Right.
emerged,
Oh my
through,
gosh. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah,
We're
channel.
in the apocalypse. Yeah, this is the reason why I call this apocalyptic chats affectionately, right? Because we're uncovering things we don't know, and yet we do know that we can ask better questions and we have the ability not to be attached to the answers.
Yeah. So this, again, ability not to be attached to the answers,
Right.
ability to respect and accept the alternative perspective, ability to be humble enough to listen, which is, by the way, the tagline of our research work. uh,
Right.
yeah, so I think that these are the most important questions which we
Sure.
need to ask ourselves and to some extent to learn as soon as possible.
Absolutely. Now, let me
Yeah,
ask this, talking about the questions and the answers and the thinking and going back inside for a moment. When you're pondering things, do you try to answer your own questions with what you think you know already? And I suspect that there's a place in there where you do reach, let's say, a place of stillness where you're open and not thinking and just listening. What happens then?
oh, that's a beautiful question. First of all, I need to say that it requires a lot of trust, because again, our anxious small egos are constantly trying to figure out all these problems which we are facing day after day.
Right.
And for me personally, connection to nature helps a lot. Again, it's maybe connected to my main work and my professional area of interest of being
It
connected
certainly
and
helps.
identifying yourself as a part of the place of the environment where you
Or
uh,
identifying yourself as a particle, not necessarily a wave, right?
yeah,
Wave is you're going by when you're, you know, past yourself.
yeah, so wave also is good because again, it's about energy, it's about convergence of these energies with
Mhm.
the place where you live. And in this case, I think that my own experience that the answers to the toughest questions come to me and come maybe through me
Right.
during my interaction with nature, being in nature. So it's definitely not at the laptop in the room.
Well,
So,
do you
yeah.
think that, and thank you for that. That was a really authentic, recognition that things come through us.
Yeah.
And now, do you find that in that process, have you thought about, we were talking about cosmic consciousness being, condensed into form, which is what we all are. We're just unaware of it. Well, in that, and going back to the Vedas as being divine threads incarnate, connected to source and capable of God consciousness. Well, would you say or intimate that we have infinite intelligence available specific to ourselves when we ask the questions and learn how to shut up?
I think that's definitely what we should learn too.
Again, the
And
trust,
yes,
the awareness, but the trust. We talk about love, and I do believe that the core desire that each of us have is simply to love and be loved. Well, what is that? That's an activity, right? And that activity stems from trust.
uh, speaking about love, I have my own definition of it, if I may share
Sure.
that. For me, first of all, love is connectedness. And when you feel connected to a person, to a place, to a child, to world, to yourself, first of all, to your inner core,
Hmm.
that's connectedness, that's clear uh, trust and clear truth.
Right. Experience.
It is love, yes. And I think that, and this the idea of again, in Christianity, God is love, yes. So I think that this idea of connectedness with the whole is precisely love itself. And speaking about these peak experiences, it's about non-duality. It's about
Mhm.
understanding that there are no borders, that you are the one with all being. So in this case, I think that, and it's total love. So it's mostly about states.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
Urban would say it's all about energy,
Yeah.
right? It's the pure energy, unfiltered, unmanipulated, and unconditional, right? We qualify the energy as it comes through us. What do we do with it? How do we behave? How do we share? What are we resistant to? What do we fear? How do we hold back? How do we give? Right? What kinds of parameters are necessary in order for us to be fully functional as cosmic consciousness incarnate? Do you think that that is kind of in the process that we're in as Eastern and Western ideologies begin to merge and spirit and matter or science and spirituality begin to offer the same understanding explained a little differently?
Well, um, here I maybe have two lenses, two paths to answer. So
Okay.
from
Well, you
the
got two eyes. That's cool.
yeah, from the integral perspective, we know that yes, we can experience some states of non-duality, but it doesn't ensure that you will be able to behave the same way when you're in some
Well,
situations.
everything's relational, right? It depends on the vibration in the moment, where others are at, because you can't, the
Yes,
old
but
saying, you can't fit a round peg into a square hole or a square
yeah,
peg
but
into a round hole. I think you can put a square peg in the round hole because you can shave the corners off.
That's precisely what human beings are constantly doing, you know.
Right.
Yeah, so in this case, to be realistic, that we are living in the world which provides lots of anxiety and lots of
Especially now.
yes, uncertainty, lots of unclarity, unpredictability. It definitely doesn't give us
No, but
the conditions to be more
doesn't the chaos that we
trustful. Yeah.
think we're experiencing, patterns we don't recognize yet, perhaps, doesn't it though also give us the opportunity to ascend from it with greater clarity?
Well, here again, my own challenge for many years was the understanding that if we are talking about the idea of the vertical development and, for example, some second tier uh, level of development, when you understand and
Hmm.
to some extent transcend and embrace all the previous approaches, you can comprehend and you can adjust and live with trust with this beingness and this wholeness. But at the same time, again, as you and me, and I hope that our audiences also knows, that it's rather difficult for a person who is living in this constant competitive paradigm just
Right. Well, the
to
dualistic
transcend.
world, right? And so is essentially what I hear you saying, it's a challenge for us to learn how to live in paradox and
Yes,
just
so
be
in
okay with it.
absolutely. So again, living with this complexity and with this paradox and with this
Hmm.
uncertainty, it's a capacity of a rather mature personality. And my main challenge for many years was what should be done in order to help people to transcend further. So I was, you know, I was I was looking for some trick on so for some shortcut how to
Yeah,
how to
good
do
luck with that, right?
it. Yeah, so yeah, definitely meditation and mindfulness and contemplative practices help at least for some period of time. But what we are trying to do in our own practice, we are working in the cities with a very diverse audience, with people from different walks of life, with people
Hmm.
with different backgrounds, with lots of challenges, or very often traumatized people, not only personally, but also collective trauma, which is connected with their
Sure.
colonial practices or wars or genocides or whatever.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's oh, my phone tries to to answer to me. That's interesting.
It's talking back to you. Isn't it interesting how these devices pay attention? You know, you mentioned something about the trauma. Decades ago, I had a One World as a TV show here locally, and one of my guests was the president of the Association of Afghans in Arizona, and they were sponsoring immigrants. Um, and one teenager came to live with them, and there was a car that backfired in the neighborhood. And this kid literally dove behind their couch immediately. Now, we don't realize the kind of trauma that these kids and adults go through in these places and the need for nurturing them into a place where they can trust their environment and not feel like they're in fear all the time, right? That's say it's more than psychological safety and intellectual humility, right? It's the physical safety and security that had been lacking that has some really deep impact. Now, how do you find that path to bringing that understanding, embracing the trauma, recognizing it, not getting lost in it, being able to bring that forth and harvest what nuggets are there to apply to nourishing the future.
Yeah. I'm trying to, I'm starting disappearing from the screen. So I definitely maybe.
Well, you went from blonde to brunette, so maybe this is the guy's.
May I switch the light on? Maybe this might help us.
Oh, that's fine. You know,
Yeah.
we're having a wonderful time and having some interesting things happen during it. So, and she's gone into the news sphere. Now she's back again. All right.
Yeah, yeah. My greetings from the noosphere. So, yes, speaking about collective and dealing and
Helping others to come out of that trauma.
yeah,
What's
facing
the,
with and embracing and
yeah.
nurturing these hard experiences which people had and respecting their past, traumatic past.
Hmm.
What we found that, so that's maybe a couple of words about the methodology of our research.
Sure.
So again, from the Western perspective, from some rational, modern perspective, we should come with some measurement in tools and try
And a
to fix,
process, right?
yes, and try to fix with people.
Yeah.
But what we decided to do instead, it's again, we learned this from the indigenous cultures, maybe even more than from the Western
Hmm.
philosophy. We are collecting stories.
Right.
We are asking people to share their own experiences in the safe and warm space of acceptance and without any judgment. And we invite people to speak about their own experience, or maybe of the experience of their relatives, or of
Hmm.
their family, or of their tribe, or sort of
Sure.
community. And we invite people to imagine and to dream what would their place of living be like. We invite people to speak on behalf of their some natural objects, such as what would river say, what would the grove say. So
Hmm.
all these things, they from one perspective, they inspire curiosity in people to explore this in some creative way. From another perspective, this metaphoric approach gives people the opportunity to speak about difficult things, maybe in some indirect ways, which
Hmm.
also to some extent relieve. And also speaking about collective planning of what might be done together and created together, this idea of creating together the story which could unfold, which could
Hmm.
emerge from their.
Now, do you find that in the telling of the stories, and let me frame this from a counselor's perspective, right? We get great questions. We're getting counseling, therapy, whatever. It's wonderful when we get good questions. The power comes in listening to our own responses. Now, because we're able to process, because we're hearing ourselves, and there's another level of integrated, maybe not integrated, but at least another level of observation, right? What we do with it is secondary, but there's the capacity to hear ourselves talk and then analyze, ascend from the trauma or what, because we're able to step back, observe it, and talk about it, right?
Yeah.
It creates some distance there. Do you find that is a consistent activity in the processes that you're working with?
Yes, I think so. And I think it's really important to, again, we were discussing this idea of the capacity to listen and to trust and to be open to the diverse perspectives. And when
I love
we
how you brought it back.
yeah, so I think that it's really important to open this space. And again, I have been working with the local administrations as a consultant, as a counsel for not the council, the advisory for
Right.
the mayors in many places. And you know, when you come in this leadership position of now I will moderate your planning process, and let's create a plan and a budget and all these things.
Well, that's a process in itself, isn't it? Because you've got to build the trust level with them, and it's all relationships, right? We're all in relationships on the ocean of emotions seeking a safe harbor. Well, how do you create that safe harbor in these various groups so that you can expedite perhaps the process? And I realize expediting may not be the most appropriate word there because things have their own schedule, right?
Yeah, so I think that when you create this free flow conversation, what I wanted to say is that
Hmm.
when you create this space of emergence of what wants to be spoken from these people,
Right. What needs to emerge, right?
what needs to emerge, yes, it gives more space and more freedom for people to be engaged and to share and to contribute some important things which might be silenced if you don't give them this space of
Right.
again of
Or the person
trust,
doesn't trust the environment. Same thing, right? You
or,
open it
or
up and you make it feel safe.
maybe at least a person thinks that you don't have time to listen to his story or her story.
Well, how
So
often, you bring up a great point. How often are we so inattentive or unattentive that we ask a question, like, how are you?
yeah,
Right?
and
We
and
don't have time to listen. Why do we even
absolutely
ask the
yes,
question?
yeah. Yeah. The most impolite thing is to start
Exactly.
answering how you really are. Yes. Yes. That's
Well, thank
precisely the
God there's
point.
long form discussions, right? Yeah. We're not doing a short podcast here by any stretch. Um, so how do you navigate through that?
Yeah.
What do you find most helpful in establishing the environments where the people do open up?
Uh, Again, we don't frame it as sort of the planning work.
Hmm.
It's mostly the opportunity for people maybe to contribute. So we we are starting with asking about personal experience of belonging to the place, of their personal meanings of why this place or this city, this village is important for them and for their
Hmm.
families. We sometimes start asking about the fairy tales or the myths of this place, or maybe of the most interesting uh, creatures who were believed to live in these places. Again, some fairy tales or mythical things.
Sure.
And through these,
Well, they may be fairy tales and mythical, but that's just to us, right? Because we can only see less than 1% of the visual light spectrum. So maybe there are those things.
definitely. But again, when you invite people to share some childhood experiences or some stories from their childhood, or some dear stories about their ancestors or their grandparents, uh, it sort of gives some relaxation in terms of relationships.
Sure.
It makes this conversation less complex, less
It's tension
dull.
filled.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
So
tension seems to just kind of dissolve in that. I experienced a similar thing. Uh, I've worn many professional hats. One of them was facilitating partnering sessions for building road and bridge construction projects, 2 to 5 year projects, multi-million dollars, 25 to 80 people in the room, depending on the size of the project. And my job was to get them to talk about their experience of partnering, if they'd had one, what worked, what didn't work, what they're bringing into the room, what expectations they have from today's meeting, right? And then how to navigate through the process effectively so that everybody reaches the same page in their own perspective with their skill set and job description, right? So similar things is what it sounds like, that you're building this rapport from the varied stories that then kind of assembles into um, a regional plan, perhaps. Is that what the outcome of these gatherings are, that there's some kind of an activity that can then take place as a result?
yes, these stories and these conversations, first of all, give us this intangible notion of their culture and values, which are important for those people.
Hmm.
Uh, Also, these conversations help reach the opposing points of view, because usually people who are coming to some discussions around some decisions which should be made on the municipal levels, they have
Hmm.
different perspectives.
Right.
And
And
this
perspective
yeah,
controls the perception too.
absolutely. So this background, these stories, again, this building trust, first of
Hmm.
all, and then this opportunity to listen to each other and to learn each other's perspective without judgment, but with curiosity to the personal experience of different people. It also gives a sense uh, of unity.
Right.
We call it the soul of the city or the soul of the place.
Sure.
That's our
Sure.
focus of our development, because this intangible relational field, which is woven from these emotions, stories, experiences, history, spiritual aspects of the land,
Yeah.
it's their common foundation which
Sure.
gives people
Well,
the
it's like
sense
being
of
a
identity.
scientist seeking intangible truths, right? You're in this study, you're examining, you're inquiring. What are you finding in the stories that also indicate the perspectives and perceptions of the individuals that may inhibit the best outcomes? And then how is that nurtured into a place that does provide a better outcome?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. That because this soul of the place, so this
Hmm.
collection of stories, these diverse perspectives on some aspects of the local development have absolutely tangible outcomes and results in city branding, in creating of touristic attractiveness, in reconciliation in some intercultural or whatever tensions which might be present in the community, healing process as well. We spoke about trauma, decision-making process, because through those conversations, we create a space where people want to be engaged into the developmental processes.
And that's all important, right?
And
You create that environment that nurtures rather than rescinds.
Yeah, and people understand that they have the common view, the common values, and the
Mhm.
common purpose for this. And even despite of the fact that their personal interests may differ, they, due to these conversations, thanks to these conversations, they can find the common point to come to to the
Sure.
same page, where to start together, collaborating together. Again, maybe even not collaborating, but co-creating the future, the
Sure.
regenerative
Well,
future
and
together.
that way, in the co-creation process, you're assembling all of the different perspectives and applying it toward a single goal that they've all agreed upon.
Yeah, yeah, and people believe uh, why in similar things. Why is it important for them personally? So it's, again, speaking about this holistic approach which we discussed earlier, it's
Hmm.
about connecting the individual perspective with the collective perspective, with the social place-based perspective. And
Sure.
it would be good if it could also be connected to the planetarian perspective, because we
Right.
also need to understand how the local development impacts the global development. So
Sure.
this global local connection is also important to be taken into the consideration.
Well, and in the development of let's just call it a planetary civilization, because now that we do know, it's open knowledge that we do have visitors. There's craft coming here. Military has acknowledged it. It's been happening for quite some time. How do we enter into a universe or universal family in the kind of condition that we've been here, where we're still at war with each other over resources? Why would we even be thought appropriate to enter into some kind of, larger family like that if we don't know how to get along? Now,
Yeah, that's
process how does this process, do you think, spill out into the ripples of learning how to get along and having better distribution of resources and support of each other on a planetary scale so that we all have access to what we need?
in some of these conversations, I remember not long ago, we discussed the idea that the only thing which might help people of different nations and different states to work with each other and to respect each other will be some extraterrestrial invasion,
Well, this is
But at the
what
same,
Reagan thought when they started Star Wars, right? Or
yeah, and again,
whatever it
there are
was.
lots of Hollywood films about the whole humanity which stands for the earth and
Right.
so on and so forth. I think that even in the absence of the extraterrestrial invaders, and I slightly mentioned that
Well,
most of that.
let me just offer this. I'm going
Okay,
to go out on a limb here. I've been an experiencer since I was a kid. I've interacted with hundreds of different races. None of them are malevolent in any way. They all want us to evolve into the kind of civilization that we're capable of being. Now, why we see them as negative or malevolent is only because of our own ability or inability to allow our own vibrational level to change when they're around, because their vibrational space is much higher than ours. It's like the difference between, you familiar with the Shabda? The Hindus call the sound current. It's the frequency of all life forms on the planet, according to their traditions, right? So this is a very high pitched, kind of the same sound that or sensation that I had in the light. So these beings have already understood the oneness of creation far more than we do and acted accordingly. And they're just trying to show us how to get there too. Now, that is not a common understanding on the planet today, regardless of my experience of its truth. So, how do we get beyond that in being open to, we're open to the inner prompts. They're able to reach those places too and communicate from that internal place. We call it telepathy. Right? These kinds of experiences are had by millions already. But like the inner conversations and allowing them to spill out, we don't want people to think that we're batshit crazy, right? But they do happen. How do you think, or what similarities do you see in the development of these group personalities in being able to dissuade or discourage the fear that comes up in them of being able to get through the differences that they have perspective wise?
First of all, maybe I would like to mention that the problem is in, again, we were talking about this anthropocentrism and our arrogance that we are the top of the evolution,
Top
and
the food chain, right?
that our cognitive abilities and our
Cognitive
skills,
dissonance, I think.
yeah, skills and knowledge is the most developed on the planet. Because again, I first of all, I wanted to speak about whales and dolphins, and I have colleagues and friends who spent years and decades on working with dolphins and whales, and they have a very, so they registered a very complex social structure and
Oh,
system
absolutely.
of interaction
Absolutely.
in this civilization, I would say, in their species. And again, we are looking at cosmos and at space, but we don't know anything at almost anything about the under water sort of our oceanic life and what is happening there. But
Right.
again, even not go into such a specific area, we also discussed not long ago dogs who have absolutely incredible telepathic abilities, because they feel and they sense and they can predict their changes in the conditions. And one of my colleagues are working with a charitable organization who who work with dogs who are prepared to work with children with autism.
It
And
sounds
these,
like a perfect match.
yes, and these dogs can sense, understand, and predict the changes in the condition of the child with autism and help a child to manage with this condition
Mhm.
and to stay calm when they become anxious.
Isn't this how nature, I mean, nature isn't destructive. Yes, it seems like it because it goes through changes and it has its cycles. However, it's all life friendly. And this inner connectedness, the energy, the emotions, the thoughts. I read years ago, um, the speed of thought. I had a curious questions about that, and I found a resource that says it's 841 trillion miles per second. And that thought has no resistance, right? It doesn't slow down. That we can communicate with each other. And it's easy, even crossing the veil, right? It's as easy as looking into somebody's face, into their eyes, and just having a communication, right? But we don't want to believe that's possible because it seems so incredulous, because we don't have a regular experience of that. Now, indigenous, the Aborigines of New Zealand and Australia, that's how they lived. Even in the Philippines, that's how they moved around during World War II to miss the military and stay out of their way. The psychic surgeons that we hear about, those kinds of things. These are all abilities that we have that we haven't developed yet, let alone acknowledged.
That's again about maybe rethinking uh, the skills and capacities which we already developed, and maybe remembering what is lost, and maybe trying to learn from other species, or at least acknowledge that another way of communication and another way of
Right.
knowledge is also and might be even more complex than
Sure. Well, we
our own
study
way.
ants, we study bees, we study bears, we study all these, the social, and, Jane Goodall, right? We study all these socialization mechanisms in other species. When are we going to reflect that upon ourselves and adapt accordingly rather than thinking we're still at the top of the food chain?
Uh, that's a very interesting question, because again, when we are talking about, I will explain you. So
Mhm.
I just thought that not long ago we had the discussion about this decolonization and decolonial way of thinking, and
Right,
that the most challenging for the Western person, or for the person who was educated in a Western paradigm,
right.
the most challenging is to start thinking differently, because we are looking at the another perspective and at the another paradigm through the lens
Sure.
of
Well,
the
if you think
whole
out of the box in
world.
the Western culture, they don't want anything to do with you, right? Because it's so rigid. No, you got to stay in the box. You got to put things in categories, label, title, manage, you
So
know.
it's very difficult to make the step back. So why
It
I
is.
remember this, because when we are studying bees, whales, dolphins, dogs, or whatever, we are looking and we are exploring them through our rational minded, very academically driven perspective.
Hmm.
And again, uh, not being a human who studies bees, but trying to imagine of being a bee or being a dog or being a dolphin, and trying to, so it's really challenging.
How about
It's
just a
about the
being?
identity. Hmm?
I said, how about just a being?
Yeah.
That's the God participle, right? My mother was an English teacher, so I play with words. So being is what I term the God participle, because you put an ing on the end of a verb and it becomes a noun. So we are individual beings.
Yes.
When can we learn to, acknowledge the hive and take care of one another?
At least we can try. So I think that
Yeah.
such
Well, and
conversation can
things
be
that you're
had.
doing, I mean, I realize those are rhetorical questions, and yet we're getting closer to finding answers that actually support the notion that we can live and work as one.
Yes, and at the same time, as our dear friend Alexander usually says, this unity without uniformity. I think it's really important,
Absolutely.
because
Well,
again,
diversity is what creates the unity. We have to, in my opinion, right? We can't deny the diversity. It's there. Well, how does it, from the place of one, if we look at it from that perspective, how does everything fit together? We're not asking from that perspective. We're looking at the destructive testing, trying to figure out what the elements are of that. We're running two protons into each other at near light speed, thinking we're going to create a third particle, not realizing the explosion creates a rip in the dimensional fabric. But yet we call it a Higgs boson because there's evidence of a decay in a particle. There's never a particle. So we assume that that evidence, we misread it. And so there must have been a particle there, right? We don't think that there's a fabric, or there's a layer between dimensions that has a hole blown in it that self-repairs, and that shows up the same kind of data. Now, what do you do with that, right? I asked one of Lawrence Krauss's TAs that question. Is it possible that that's what's happened, instead of the discovery of the Higgs boson. He looked at me like deer in the headlights. He it just totally blew him away. Well, why can't we think like that? That seems to me like a reasonable question.
Yeah.
Who knows? We ask more and we shut up and listen, right? So,
Listen with
it's
curiosity and humbleness.
absolutely, absolutely. Got to have radical curiosity. You get nowhere. And don't be attached to the answers because there's going to be more to come. Speaking of answers, we're coming close to the time. What do you find that you can share with others that works well for you on a moment-to-moment basis as to how to navigate the magnificence of life? I'll just put it that way. What do you find has the best results for you when you're in the midst of navigating the world?
Beautifully put question. So I think that we have already answered, because first of all, it's about trust and letting emerge what wants to be emerged.
Mhm.
And when I don't have answers, I just try to pause and to give way to something which wants to come. And again, I told you that maybe the easiest way for me personally is to walk somewhere in nature
Mhm.
without any distractions, without any sort of music or companions or whoever. So the cleaner the contact with the
Sure.
environment, the better.
Do you notice when you're walking in nature and you're thinking, do you notice the reflections in the sounds of everything around you?
Yes, and at the same time, I would maybe say that when I'm trying to have the answers, to find the answers, I'm trying not to think.
So you think more, right?
Yeah,
It's funny how the brain works,
yeah.
right? It doesn't pay attention to don't or not. It focuses on the subject, which is thinking. I don't want to think. Well, what are you going to do? You're going to think.
Well, it's maybe about the meditative practice of relaxation, and
Yeah.
again, trying to feel this oneness with nature. And uh, you know, I think that's the experience of awe when you see the magnificence
Yeah.
of the living world, of blooming trees, of clouds in the sky. So in this case, the better you relax your cognitive muscle, uh, the cleaner the channel where from which you can find
Sure.
the proper answer. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, I think, if the question lies somewhere in the area of decision making or relationships, it's really important to share their idea with the people whom you trust and whom you respect, and who has the same vision and the same values as yourself, because it helps to reflect. And very often, and again, it's to some extent maybe about trust and humbleness,
Hmm.
because sometimes people give you maybe not a positive feedback on some of your ideas, and I hate these periods, these situations.
Well,
But
I mean, any
but
feedback you get is
in,
positive, even if it's not so,
but
supportive, it gives you
these
something to work with.
these feedbacks are usually the most precious,
Yeah.
despite of the fact
It
that I
pokes
don't
holes
like
in
this
where you're thinking,
feeling.
right?
It's really important, because when people whom you respect and who is important for you in the area which you are discussing, of course,
Okay.
When you give you feedback and when they disagree, it widens your worldview. It gives you another perspective. And usually it's very useful and very valuable. So,
Oh, absolutely.
so that's another thing. So direct channeling from the noosphere, which we mentioned today, and this relational iterative dialogue with people. And by the way, with AI as well, because when you ask it and it gives you an answer, 90% that it's very narrow and in many cases irrelevant. But if you have this iterative way of inquiry, and that's maybe another topic for the
Yeah,
conversation,
it is.
usually you can co-create something very important. Because again, if you don't, in this case, you should not fully trust. You should challenge. And through this circular iterative challenging, you can find a very interesting answer. But again, it demands time and it demands very specific way of thinking.
Sure. And speaking of time, I totally loved the time we had today, and thank you so much for it. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I'm sure our audience has gotten a lot from it too. So
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much. It's absolutely fantastic. And I would speak and speak and speak. It's very interesting. Thank you
I
so
have a
much.
feeling we both could. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. And namaste and in cats. And thanks for sticking with us for this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel. And for Marina and myself, we thank you so much. Do like, subscribe, comment. It makes the world, it means the world to us. So thanks so much in advance, and I'll see you next time. Do you ever feel like you're in your 40 days and nights in the desert? Well, many do. There's too much frustration, pain, and suffering in the world today, and I help people through that to find joy and happiness in their lives, to create action plans, and find a way to achieve their goals. I've done that with many. If my reputation online is anything like I show up in person, you've got a great score here.